Hello there, welcome to the online news. Good to be with you. I'm Ariqah Ayu Maharani. The conflict between Israeli forces and Hamas militants has escalated and is on the verge of war. There are reports of Israeli troops making ground maneuvers. They are the worst clashes seen in the region in years. Here is our simplest explanation for one of the most contested regions on earth. The conflict between Israel and Palestine has raged on the generations. The fighting we see now is over the same issues and the hatred born of 100 years of struggle. This is the history, a timeline of the conflict in the Middle East, the battle over Gaza, the West Bank, and Jerusalem. After the Ottoman Empire was defeated in World War I, Britain took control of the area known as Palestine. It is a strip land between the River Jordan and Mediterranean Sea. Back then, it was occupied by the Arab majority and the Jewish minority. The international community tasked Britain with setting up a quote national home for Jewish people in Palestine. But both the Jews and Arabs claim that historical Palestine was their land. You can see how that will become an issue. From the 20s to 40s, many Jewish people fled to Palestine, escaping the persecution and the atrocities of the Holocaust. But that only incited the Arab population living there. Violence between the Jews, Arabs, and against the Brits escalated. In 1947, the United Nations voted for Palestine to be split into separate Jewish and Arab states. Jerusalem, a holy land for both, would become an international city. The Jewish leaders embraced the plan, but the Arab leaders did not. So began a stalemate. In 1948, the Brits realized that the problem could have been solved by them, so they left, and the Jewish leaders declared the creation of the State of Israel, backed by the United States President Harry S. Truman. But this didn't go down well with many Palestinians. A war broke out, with neighboring Arab countries including Jordan and Egypt joining the fight. The beginning of the Arab-Israeli conflict was catastrophic for Palestinians. Hundreds of thousands fled. By the time fighting in the following years, Israel has controlled most of the land. Jordan, siding with Palestinians, occupied land which became known as the West Bank, while Egypt occupied Gaza. Jerusalem divided between Israeli forces in the west and the Jordanian forces in the east. Crucially, there was never a peace agreement. Each side blamed the other. The war would continue for decades. Fast forward to June 5, 1967, the beginning of the SixDay War. Now this is significant because the map was again redrawn. Israel has captured and occupied the West Bank, the Gaza Streets, and other Arab territories. The thing is, most Palestinians, refugees, and their descendants live in Gaza and the West Bank. Israel will not allow them to return to their homes. They say this would only overwhelm the country and threaten its existence as a Jewish state. Now, Israel still occupied the West Bank, and even though it is pulled out of Gaza, the United Nations still recognize that land as occupied territory. Jerusalem is one of the holiest lands on earth for Christians, Jews, and Muslims. Israel claims the whole city as its capital, but Palestine claims East Jerusalem as the capital of this future state. For the past 50 years, Israel has built settlements in Jerusalem. For more than 600,000 Jews now live there, but Palestinians say that is illegal under the international law. They have made numerous attempts at peace over the decades, starting in the 1979 and culminating in the 90s in Oslo. Palestinian and Israeli leaders met and negotiated a two-state solution. Initial promise and optimism gave away anger and distrust, and by 2003, violence again erupted. By 2008, the prospect of peace had taken a severe hit. The most recent peace plan came from Donald Trump in January 2020. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said it was the deal of the century. But the Palestinians scoffed at it, saying it was one-sided, so the tension remained incredibly high, especially in the East Jerusalem, Gaza, and the West Bank. Since 2007, Gaza has been ruled by a Palestinian militant group called Hamas, which battles Israel countless times. Palestinians says they are suffering because there are rarely action and restrictions. Israel says it is only acting to protect itself from Palestinian violence. It is endless. Then, things kicked off in mid-April 2021. Since the start of the holy Muslim month of Ramadan, there were daily, violent clashes between Israeli police and Palestinian. They have forced eviction of Palestinian families in East Jerusalem, fleeing the situation. In the neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah, an Israeli man with a thick New York accent is filmed occupying the backyard of a Palestinian woman's home. And then, this. Israel unleashed devastating airstrikes on Gaza while Hamas countered with hundreds of rockets back at Israel. As it is so often being the case, conflicting claims over Jerusalem is at the emotional core of this conflict. Egypt and other surrounding nations tried to broker peace, but as always, for peace to be agreed upon, both sides need to resolve complex, deep-seated issues, and until that happens, it is hard to see an end to this endless conflict. That is the online news for today. Thanks for watching. I'm Ariqah Ayu Maharani, and have a great day.